Hey everybody, welcome to A Real Point of View. My name is Greg Morgan and I am your host. I'm also the Real Movie Guy on Twitter and the Real Movie Guy on Facebook. And I am joined by my co-host, one of my co-hosts. We have a myriad of co-hosts, about five of us, I guess, all together. But tonight I'm joined by the more regular co-host, and that is the movie maven herself, Miss Karen D. How you doing, Karen?
I'm doing great, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing good. Had a very interesting week this week, but you know, that's life. Life is interesting, and you want to make sure that it's always interesting. So you do the things that you got to do, and um, got some an article to my publisher, so I'm pretty stoked about that. Hopefully that'll pan out. Um,
Awesome.
so I'm thrilled about that critique, and I did it on the new movie Birth of a Nation. So
Oh,
hopefully that'll get published. Fingers crossed. And so you had said this to, ladies and gentlemen. Karen mentioned this to me briefly this week, and we seem to be going into that time where um, the critiques are not always easy, and the reviews are not so easy when someone has passed away. So tonight's show we're dedicating to a really good director, screenwriter, and actually photographer as well, in Curtis Hanson. Um, Now, this might not be a name that is very, very well known because, again, this particular director hadn't had as many credits as maybe some of his peers, but um, very poignant and to the point in some really good films that he was involved in. And so tonight we're going to try to talk about a few of those and hopefully do justice to this unique and very good director and screenwriter. So I think for me, Curtis Hanson, probably the first film that I remember seeing of his was probably The Hand That Rocks the Cradle with uh, Rebecca De, I always say this wrong, Rebecca De Mornay. See if I slow down.
De Mornay.
See, there you go. If I slow down and also get a assist, I can maybe say this right. Rebecca De Mornay. So this was a film that actually introduced her to me as an actress, and what a film to do it in, and what a way she did it. This was a creepy, creepy, creepy movie, and she was really creepy in it, and she actually made this movie work. Um, and of course, obviously, by the direction of Curtis Hanson, bringing all this craziness out of her. One thing that he always said is that a good film pretty much is basically the best part of a good film is having a good script. Well, I think it also goes into the midst of having a good director in order to execute that script and get the actors to do what his interpretation of what it should be done with regard to um, staying with the script and trying to express what the screenwriter and or author is trying to uh, project out there with their film in their book. And so I think he did a really good job in Hands That Rock the Cradle with her, because she really, I don't get scared at movies, but she really was creepy. She kind of creeped me out a little bit. What about you, Karen? What did you think about
Me
the
too.
film?
Well, actually, I just saw the film,
Oh, you
and
did see it back? Oh, I thought you had seen it before.
no, I had seen it before. I've seen it on a
Oh,
couple of occasions, but I saw it again tonight just to
oh,
refresh my
okay.
memory as to was, and she was really creepy, very creepy. And Rebecca De Mornay really makes the film, I think. But it's sort of like I mean, to me, it's like she's got this whole like painting. She gets to have the fun of like working with all the colors, and the other members of the cast are kind of like the canvas. So
Right.
you have Annabella Sciorra is, you know, one of the dumbest wives ever, and then you've got Matt McCoy, who may not know his name specifically, but he was a sort of he had a couple of guest spots on Seinfeld as Lloyd Braun, the aide to the mayor of New York City, and at that time the mayor was David Wilkins, so David Dinkins. So Matt McCoy played Lloyd Braun, and Lloyd Braun had gone crazy after a scandal when he was working for the mayor, and so there was this one episode where Kramer was trying to convince Lloyd that he really wasn't crazy, even though he really was. So audiences might remember him from that. And he, you know, he's done a number of character parts and that kind of stuff. But he had a starring role. He was the co-star in this one, in this particular movie. And then there was a child, their daughter, and I'm trying to remember her name.
Madeline
She had a
Zima.
very unusual name.
Madeline
Hmm?
Zima. Madeline Zima.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And so I'd say she's the other person who's kind of almost stole this film, because she was the child who, you know, typical precocious child, at least by Hollywood standards, who never does what her parents tell her to do. So every time her parents would say, stay here, she would always leave the room. It's like, which part of stay here do you not get? Stay in the room. Stay. Like, you know, don't move. But she would always do that. But her inability to obey simple commands like stay kind of ended up helping the family. And then another co-star of the film is Ernie Hudson. And this was what was kind of creepy. What was actually a little more creepy than Rebecca was Ernie Hudson playing a developmentally disabled uh, Solomon, who you know, all he wanted out of life was a bike, and and all he wanted to do was just like take care of, you know, this family. And I'm like, this. I'm watching this. I'm like, this is like a little. Ooh. I mean, the movie's almost 25 years old, so maybe 25 years ago it didn't mean that much. I mean, some of these visuals of like the, you know, the person sort of works in for this family, and all he cares about is taking care of the babies and you know, family, and making sure, you know, nobody's going to hurt my family. He even says that at one point. No, I'm not going to let anybody hurt this family. I'm like, really, dude? I mean, because you might want to work on getting your own life, you know, because you can do that now. But anyway, that was a little uncomfortable to me. But the film itself, I think it's delicious fun, you know, and really because of Rebecca De Mornay, because she's just very sinister, because she has this very quiet manner, and apparently either her or Curtis Hanson or the makeup people, the production designers, put a lot of thought into how she looked,
Yeah.
because if you in the beginning of the movie starts out with a tragedy, because, well, it starts out with a happy occasion and a tragedy. It starts out with this family, Annabella Sciorra and Matt McCoy. Their characters are expecting a baby,
Mhm.
and she needs to go to the OBGYN specialist. So she goes, but her regular doctor has retired. So this new doctor has taken that doctor's place. The new doctor is played by John Delancey, who are some of our audience might remember. He had a recurring role on Star Trek Next Generation as I want to say Q. I think his character's name was Q.
I don't. I think you're right. he did play cute.
Right. So much younger in this particular instance, but he plays the doctor. So Annabella Sciorra says at one point, "Oh, okay, well, I'm just here for the checkup." And he says, "Well, take off your clothes." And she said, "Well, I didn't think I would get a full exam at this point in time. I thought that would wait for several months." He's like, "Well," and then the doctor says, "Well, for all my new patients, I always want to start with a thorough exam. I just want to make sure that everything is progressing as it should. So, put your legs up, submit to the exam." And then he starts examining her, but he starts sort of chatting, really creepy. And as a woman who's had to go through those exams, let me tell you, like an actual above board gynecologist never chats with you while you're undergoing the exam. That's like the height of creepy. You keep conversation to the minimum. The only thing that the doctor talks to you about, if it's legitimate, if it's a doctor who's doing the right thing, is what, questions about the exam, what you're feeling, is this a problem, is that okay, or whatever, but no chatting about the beautiful day or the birds singing or that was just totally creepy. And she felt violated, so she leaves. She has an asthma attack. She has stress related asthma, so every time she gets freaked out, she has an asthma attack, which makes it hard to breathe, which causes numerous problems throughout the picture. She tells her husband what happened, and her husband says, "You've got to submit a complaint to the medical board. You must, because if you don't do it, he's going to do this to somebody else." So it's nice to see that the husband believes her, for one, and that he's encouraging her to do the right thing, because sometimes in movies, just like the husband doesn't believe at all. But anyway, so she presses charges, and lo and behold, when she presses charges, 4 of the women come forward and say, "Me too, me too, me too. He creeped me out too. He molested me too. He sexually assaulted me too." Oh my God. So this is all like in the first 10 minutes of the movie. So there's another shot to the doctor who's watching the news, and the news talks about, well, Dr. So-and-so, his license has been revoked by the medical board, and, a criminal investigation's underway, and blah, blah. And he's listening to the news, and then he shoots himself, kills himself. And then there's later, there's Rebecca De Mornay. Rebecca De Mornay's character is the wife, or the widow now. And then there's another shot where she's talking to the doctor, not the doctors, but the lawyers for her husband's estate. And the lawyers say, well, the estate could be tied up for quite a while because of all this litigation, which is what happens when you're subject to lawsuits from multiple parties. And so no, you don't have any money and all the accounts are frozen, but is there anything else we can do to help? And she's like, no. She just gives him this really withering look, which I just loved. And then she tries to walk out with some measure of dignity and her own steam, but she just faints. And then she ends up, and as it turns out, she's pregnant. And they rush her to the hospital. She's lost in a massive amount of blood. She loses the baby. She almost dies, but they bring her back. But she loses the baby, and then that's when the wheels get start in motion. So, in the beginning, when you have these visuals of her as the doctor's wife, she has these very severe hairstyles. Her hair is pulled back in like a French roll or chignon or something like that. She wears very severe, very tailored, very high-end clothes, like designer clothes. So she's obviously used to shopping in the best places, and she's used to having the best of everything. That's how she's presented as the doctor's wife or widow. Then when she finds a way to hook up with Annabella Sciorra and Matt McCoy, with that family, she looks entirely different. Her hair is down, in this really girlish style, and it's, you know, maybe a little bit pulled back with like a barrette. She wears sort of preppy clothes, like sweaters and very simple A-line skirts, nothing form-fitting, nothing in the least provocative, conservative, but really preppy, like almost schoolgirl type. The picture of innocence.
Gotta make it
Yes.
impressive.
The picture of innocence. And I just thought that was so cool. I really did. I really like just that little bit of attention to detail.
Yeah, and I think just like anything else, the more detail oriented the director is, the better we'll see the film in its fruition, and we can get a true essence, a true taste of the essence of what the film's really about. And I think by him doing that, it shows levels. We have, like you alluded to, the level of the rich woman, the level of the preppy type, who's a little bit more subdued, and that means that you can get into any family if you're giving them that subdued demeanor instead of that original demeanor, which they're very suspicious of that.
Right.
So, yeah,
right. And even Rebecca De Mornay's voice changes. Like in the beginning of the movie, when she's the widow, she speaks in like in a lower register, and her speaking is very precise and very pointed. Like I mean business. That's her whole tone. Like there's no sense of humor here or anything. And then when she finds a way to insinuate herself into this family, she speaks in this really, you know, light voice, very, very nice and very soft. And oh yes, well, I was looking for a nanny position, but you know, I wasn't referred. Maybe I should just go. You know, that kind of stuff. I'm like, really, people, you're falling for this? This is crazy.
And then when she talks to Ernie Hudson, oh yeah, now we got the third personality.
You even think about, she's like, you even think about saying anything. Did you like seeing me? Did you like seeing me with a baby? You better not even think about saying anything. I'll cut you and your baby too. You know, she was just like, I just love that.
You know what this movie reminds me of? And this is what I was thinking. I was thinking that Rebecca De Mornay's character, or De Mornay's character, reminds me of the bad seed. Like this is what she would be if she had grown up.
Yes.
If she had grown up, this was her as an adult.
This is true. And how she, I mean, maybe I was watching this movie through 2016 eyes, but I'm like, whoa, this person just sort of steps out from behind a bus, and she's like, oh, I heard you were looking for a nanny. Well, how would you hear that? Oh, I heard some nannies talking in the park, and then I thought, oh, I need a job. Maybe I'll try to find out what the position is. Maybe I could try for this job too.
Yeah, like the nanny union hangs out at the park.
Yeah, right. And Annabella's like, oh, okay, but wait, there's another really telling scene. I mean, the whole movie just sort of announces, this is the dumbest family on earth. Announces it from the beginning, because remember in the very beginning, they had hired Ernie Hudson, who plays Solomon. They had hired him to do landscaping work for them, right? And just like kind of odd job stuff. So
Which also reminds me of The Bad Seed.
Yeah, right. So he comes to the house. Remember, he's developmentally disabled. He's sponsored by this nonprofit organization that tries to place people in positions so that they can acquire job skills. Very worthy goal, endeavor. So they drop him off the house. He knocks on the door. Well, she's like busy cooking and kind of in headphones on. The father is upstairs with the daughter. Matt McCoy's upstairs with the daughters, and they're singing songs, so they don't hear anything. And he, knock, 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 tentative, nothing happens. Knock, 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 tentative, nothing happens. So then, Solomon gets a little like, anxious. So then he, goes around to the front of the house, and Annabella's like in her own world and not really looking out the window. But then she turns and she sees, what does she see? A black man walking around the property. So she's like, oh my God. And then, and she has a picture or something, or some glass vessel, and she drops that, makes a huge sound. Matt comes running down the stairs. Oh my God, there's this black man walking around our property. And he runs out. He grabs him. Who are you? And then they remember, oh yeah, we hired him. oh yeah. Oh yeah, you're supposed to be here. Whoopsies. So come on in, and here's our daughter, and I'm so and so. Here's my husband, and hey, would you like some food? You want some water? I'm like, really, people? Come on, really? Oh my God, it's like, okay, stupid family alert. This is like stupid family on board. Fasten your seatbelts. And then so Rebecca comes along. It's like, okay, for her, this is going to be like shooting fish in a barrel, because not only does she not have references, not only does she even have a resume? Who knows? She said, she used her maiden name, and she's like, yeah, well, I just happened to be in the neighborhood. Just thought I'd stop by and see if you needed a nanny. Oh, okay. Well, come on in. Oh, would you like some dinner? Would you like to stay for dinner? Do you know anything about this woman? Have you checked? Have you run a background check? That's kind of what you do when you hire a nanny. No, she just seems so nice, and she's got blonde hair, and it's so pretty, and her sweater's so cute, and our daughter seems to like her, so let's invite her in. Yeah, come on in, move right on in, and she gets the full run of the house. I mean, she doesn't even get a break-in period. Oh, here's the baby, here's our newborn. Just have at him whenever you want. Just, check in his room, look through the drawers, you're being so helpful. Just have the entire run of the place. So, of course, when she starts breastfeeding the baby, are we surprised? No, we are not. Then that's really creepy. I'm like, really?
That's totally creepy.
Ew. It's like, I know.
Who knew that our nanny was lactating? Who knew? Well, that's just convenient. That's so helpful.
That's very helpful. Yeah, our little baby is never hungry. He always seems full. And then this is the kind of stuff you just want to laugh out loud. I mean, not because it's funny, but because it's like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening, kind of thing. But she even says to him, wow, our baby, doesn't seem to want I try to breastfeed him, and he's like, not interested. And Matt's like, really? Matt McCoy, I keep saying Matt McCoy because he plays the husband. So the husband's like, really? That's kind of odd. Are you sure? Well, yeah. I mean, between the two of them, who do you think's trying to do the breastfeeding? It's certainly not you. So yeah, if she says he's not feeding, he's not feeding. But anyway, so he's like, oh, gee, well.
Yeah,
I think he said, did you talk to the doctor? Did you call the doctor? She's like, well, yeah. And he said, and they got another doctor. I'm like, really? After what happened with the first one, you're not going with women OBGYNs? Because that's what I'd be doing. But anyway, I digress. But anyway.
It's the late 90s.
And she's like, well, he said, as long as the baby's growing, everything's okay. Wow. So how do you think he's growing if you can't even breastfeed him? Hungry when you think he ought to be hungry. I mean, breastfeeding babies need to eat like 3, 4, maybe 6 times a day. So you keep trying to breastfeed him and he says no, but somehow he's growing. What do you think? Something weird might be going on here?
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
Some people believe in divine intervention, and that's a possibility. No, not in this case. Well, what do you think? Do you think Curtis Hanson has something to do with making this crazy, bizarre movie actually really come out to be pretty good? It actually was a pretty good film.
I'm having a hard time hearing you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was saying, Curtis Hanson must have worked some kind of magic to make all this crazy endeavor come out to be a really pretty decent film. I actually like this film.
I like this film too. I mean, for one, it's sort of, I mean, it's not it's not like an early form of this type of genre. I mean, we've seen lots of movies like this before, but somehow what he did just seemed to be a little bit of a fresh take. And I think it's because he used Annabella Sciorra. I mean, I think that was very nice. She and Matt McCoy had a nice chemistry. But the other thing is that the same amount of attention was paid to Rebecca De Mornay's looks while she was a widow, in the midst of that, and then like 6 months later when she decides, I'm cutting this family, I'm gonna find a way to cut this family, a whole new one for making my life so miserable. So her attention to her look after that, the same type of attention was paid to Annabella Sciorra's look, because look at how she was dressed for this whole film. She never ever dresses up. She never looks sexy or appealing. She wears the sloppiest clothes imaginable. That's it. That's all she wears. I mean, she's like casual Friday run amok. Okay. And you kind of have to wonder, what does her husband see in her? And she seems to have like no personality. And she's just like, oh, may I sleep with Danger? Why, of course, Danger, come right on in. You knocked on the door, so of course I have to let you in because you knocked on the door.
She would have never made it to a vampire movie.
Oh, no, they would have had her for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
We're talking about inviting him in on every occasion. It just would be crazy.
Right. And, so she's extremely gullible and very fragile. That's her whole, that's the whole thing. And there's another key part of the movie where she and her husband have a fight, and I won't say over what. She and her husband have a fight, but it's at the time of her birthday, and he's planned a surprise birthday party for her. Now you would think that you as a husband, if you were planning a surprise birthday party for your wife, then you would come up with some pretense where, oh yeah, well we're going out to dinner and we're going to this great place, and but first we need to, oh, I forgot my key, so let me go back to the house and get the key. So she has to get dressed up, and then when they go to the party, if the party's being held at the house, wherever it is, she's dressed for a festive evening, and then the friends can say surprise, and this is awesome. No. Apparently, this surprise birthday party took place, I don't know, in the middle of the afternoon, because none of these people need to work. And after this fight, she walks into the living room, and there are friends. The friends are going, well, the friends heard the fight, so they're like, surprise, awkward, but a surprise. And she's like in jeans and this kind of like too big, like old jacket coat that she's worn throughout the entire picture. I'm like, really? That's so bizarre. And yet her husband is supposed to find her just incredibly fetching. I'm like, why? But it's really nice juxtaposition, I think, because Rebecca always looks put together.
Well, she has to. In order for you to be that plotting and that evil and that somewhat narcissistic, you have to look, fetching, as you put it.
Right.
And nobody else,
but like you said,
nobody notices but the viewing audience.
Right. But those touches really made the film fun to watch, I think. And you agree. I am assuming that you agree with me in that.
Oh yeah, it was pretty interesting, because again, sometimes as you watch films, if you're paying close attention, you're going to catch all the nuances. But sometimes you just want to sit back and be able to have these things presented to you, so that you don't have to think so much about those things to try to put it together, and can concentrate a little bit more on, the actions that are being transmitted throughout the film. So, it works either way. But in this particular film, It worked well. We could see the transitions. We could see the depth in character by the visuals, by the conversation that we hear in the film. We don't have to work so hard.
Right. Right. Well, I'd like to shift our discussion of Kurt Hansen from this movie to the movie for which he is best known, and that is L.A. Confidential. Yes, this is an Academy Award-winning film. The film was nominated for Best Picture. It was nominated. It received a nomination for Best Director. Kurt Hansen received a nomination for Best Director. It got a nomination for Best Screenplay from Best Adapted Screenplay, and Kurt Hansen won, along with Bruce Halligan, won an Oscar for that, and Kim Basinger won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. This is the iconic movie. This movie, I believe, was done in 1997, and all-star cast and just an amazing cast. Guy Pearce,
One of my favorites.
Russell Crowe. Yeah, I love Guy Pearce. Love
and
Guy
Kevin
Pearce.
Spacey especially. Love
Kevin Spacey.
Danny DeVito. I mean, this is a rich film of just epic proportion as far as the type of the actors in it. And you know, we always talk about different films where a director really likes an actor and brings that actor along in a scene.
Yes.
And Matt McCoy is in this movie as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a wealth of just great actors in this film, and but the film was great in itself. So
the film was great, and the source material was great because, as it turns out, this movie was based on actual events. The movie itself is not a true story, but some of the events that sort of populated the movie, or sort of plot points of the movie, moved plot points along, were based on real events that happened in 1950s Los Angeles. The movie is set in 1953. And you have this really intriguing character study of three cops, one of whom is kind of like your justice by any means necessary type of guy. And one guy who's like, I'm going to move up in the department, basically by any means necessary, but extremely ambitious and calculates every single move possible so that he can elevate himself within the Los Angeles Police Department. And then you have another cop who, you know, is a good cop, but is very sloppy and sleazy. He's just gotten lazy because he's sort of resting on his own laurels. And they all come together over this murder case, and they're trying to find out who, you know, they're trying to solve the murder, but they have these extremely different approaches to the case. And, you know, under very tense circumstances, because like the guy who's nakedly ambitious is willing to cut corners to elevate his career at the expense of the case. He doesn't want to be found out. The guy who, you know, is sort of resting on his own laurels and is kind of so busy enjoying the perks of being a cop and kind of like a D-list celebrity that he's missing obvious clues. He doesn't want anyone to find out how sloppy he's gotten. And the guy who is really motivated to solve the case, but is willing to do almost anything to get the case solved, also can't afford to be found out because he's not doing things by the book. He's like, screw the book, I'm solving this case. One guy is like absolutely by the book, not because he cares about the case, but because he cares about his career. And the other guy is just too busy having fun.
I mean, it's a basic, everybody's getting in each other's way. And yet,
yes,
had they cooperated with each other and actually run the case like they should have run the case, a lot of the things that happened later on could have been avoided. And this is that situation where, you know, after they're all getting in each other's way, then there's Kim Basinger.
Right.
Ooh.
Right.
Does the victim ish.
I'm sorry?
The victim-ish person.
Oh, right. Yes, is she a victim or is she not a victim?
Yes, exactly. That's the point.
Right. And did she kind of help the murder along, or?
Well, they're too busy in each other's way to figure it out. That's the problem.
Right, exactly. So, and in this movie, I think that one of the biggest contributions that Kurt Hanson made with this movie is that it brought back, like, in just vivid terms, film noir is such a critical part of the history of Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Because in 1997, we've gotten away from film noir.
Oh yeah,
I think
by far. I mean, we're talking about
very
a genre.
far away.
Yeah, we're talking about a genre that pretty much kind of hit us initially in the late 30s and was more impactful in the 40s and the 50s and maybe even the early 60s. But after that, we're talking about a long hiatus for films that gave us that kind of texture.
Right.
The detective trying to solve the case and all this mystery that surrounds it. You know, we get thrillers, but not that true mystery, that true dark
not the noir.
undertones. Yeah, we don't get any of that dark undertones in many of the crime features that we see today. So
right.
Yeah, this was definitely a resurgence. Sadly, for only the one film, but giving us a resurgence.
No, I think there was some. I think there were a number of copycat. I guess I would disagree about the only one film, because I think there were a number of not copycat films, but films in that sort of tried to evoke that same sort of spirit, much less successfully, but they tried it. And among those, I would name Hollywoodland, The Black Dahlia, with Scarlett Johansson.
Well, I'm talking about I'm talking about when this film came out, is what I'm alluding to. I mean, back when this film came out, which would have been like the late 90s.
It was 1997.
Right. 1997. I'm talking about the movies you're talking about are well into the 2000s. I'm just talking about, like, during this period of time, there wasn't very many films like this, and that's another thing that made this film stand out.
Yeah, I agree with you. There weren't any films like that then. I guess what I was trying to say is that because LA Confidential was so successful, it paved the way for The Black Dahlia and Hollywoodland and similar films later on. And they didn't come that much later than LA Confidential. We're talking about the early 2000s. The Black Dahlia came out in 2006.
So almost 10 years
and
later.
Yeah, well, that's true.
But, and as you alluded to, Black Dahlia was not.
And Hollywoodland came out in 2006 too. So yeah, you're right. They were both about 9 years later. So they were later. But I think they were trying to capture that same sort of extremely stylish, with the femme fatale, who's so much more complex than she lets on, and all of these countervailing motives, and people, like you said, working at cross purposes, even though everybody supposedly has the same goal, which is to solve this murder, but you would never know it from the way people acted in this movie.
It really had no idea that's what they were trying to do.
Right. But the acting in this movie was just a treat to watch. Guy Pearce and Russell Crowe, just riveting, I think, on the screen. Guy Pearce especially, I just couldn't take my eyes off of him, because he looked very much like the very sort of straight-laced, by the book kind of cop that he was playing in this movie. And you just knew from the way that he carried himself that he had this dark side. You know what the dark side was, but it was there. It's like there, he was doing this not out of a sense of joy or honor or commitment to the greater good, but for extremely selfish motives, and so selfish that they were almost sinister. And it's intriguing to see that, because on the surface, this is the guy who wins the awards. This is the guy who gets the promotions. You know, he's like he's the dream cop. This is the cop that you tell your rookies you want to be just like this guy as a cop.
And always that's the red flag. Always
Yeah.
the red flag, because there's no perfect.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And
yeah, there really isn't.
And he reminds me
Right.
a little bit of some of the characters that were played, referring back to the renaissance of film noir. He's kind of an Alan Ladd guy. Alan Ladd, he's got the tough exterior, but he really has a heart of gold. And then when he had the heart of gold, and deep down in the underline and in the underbelly of his psyche was this weird, bizarre, kind of almost cruel person. You know, so yeah, I think Guy Pearce would have fit his character, especially, but his portrayal would have fit wonderfully 20 years, 30 years prior.
Yes. And really, it's like Russell Crowe was like the most maverick of the cops in terms of the procedures that he would use to solve a case, but he actually was truer to the main goal than the other two cops who just they looked the part. They said all the right things. They did the right things on the surface, but Russell Crowe was the one who actually cared about the case. Or that's how it came across, more than Kevin Spacey's character and more than Guy Pearce's character. But you know, what's so delicious about film noir, and that's one of my favorite genres in terms of movies. I absolutely adore film noir. It's my favorite movie. One of my favorite movies is Suspicion, which is like a classic film noir type movie. What's so delicious about film noir? Right. And I think Curtis Hanson does a lovely job in highlighting this. Is so often in film noir, it's not just the people that are characters, but the place is a character. And in LA Confidential, LA is just as much of a character, has just as big a role as Guy Pearce or Kim Basinger or Danny DeVito or any of the people. And film noir is wonderful at doing that. It's like the pulse of the city, the beat of the city, all these teeming human lives that make up this huge organism that becomes a character. And the place, the dress, the lighting, there were lots of sunset, rosy hues and kind of dark scenes, and really just masterfully done. I mean, and I think, like you said at the beginning, Kurt Hanson, he's not one of these directors who has tens and tens of movies to his credit. I mean, I think Alfred Hitchcock directed over 60 movies during his career. Kurt Hanson directed only 17 movies during his career. And they weren't all, movie cinema. He also did, in 2011, he did a TV movie called Too Big to Fail, another excellent movie. It was made for HBO about the Great Recession of 2008. Excellent movie. Didn't get a whole lot of notice, but very well done. But he does not have that many directing credits to his name. But even with only 17 credits, he he's managed to leave his stamp on Hollywood cinema in a way that other directors with far more credits never have, because of one movie, and that's LA Confidential. It's just so beautifully done, so so well written, so beautifully photographed, so beautifully acted, and just such an interesting story. And it's just, I mean, you kind of don't want to, you're afraid of the terrible things that are going to happen when you watch the movie. But of course, in the tradition of all great movies, you can't look away because it's just so compelling to watch. And directors work their whole lives and never get that, but Kurt Hansen did.
But also, too, I think he invested even more so in this film because he's one of the screenwriters, too. So
Right.
now you're talking about taking your imagination from your mind and all those things that you're putting into this particular piece, writing it on paper, and then conveying it on screen. It's just a natural progression for someone who's so vested in the outcome, so vested in the interpretation and um, the true telling of the story. And you can appreciate that, but even more so when it comes off like this movie did. This movie came out. This is one of those movies that once you watched it, there are a lot of films that you may watch later on, but you can watch this again and again and again and get a slightly different take on the things that you might have missed the first or second time that you watched it, because he put so much into this film. And of course, he got a lot out of it too. This was a very successful film for him, and I appreciate it. I like this film. It's a good one. He did it. He did it justice by far.
Oh, he really did. He made everybody remember why film noir is just such an awesome genre, and why we shouldn't ever just let it languish.
Yeah, I
So
think
I
it's
think
something that needs to be revisited if you can successfully revisit it.
if you can successfully revisit it. But I think, that's the gift of Kurt Hansen, for which I certainly plan to remember him for, is he gave us film noir back, I think.
And I like
Um,
the fact that he's tackled these types of films, but that show um, dark side, courage, um, cerebral essence. Another good one I liked of his was River Wild with Meryl Streep, um,
mhm.
and that was a thriller. Of these killers um, go to this area where this woman makes her living taking people on raft tours, and she fights the rapids, and such good visuals. I mean, he was a master at good visuals,
Right.
and getting his actors to truly embrace their roles. I mean, that's the ultimate um, uh, essence of what you really want from your actors. But not everybody can pull it off. Not everybody can get the actors to do the things that are necessary to truly tell the story in a certain way. And I think he was very successful at that.
He really was. And he also, I mean, his interest didn't just go to, suspense movies or mystery movies. He liked telling biographical tales. He was the director for 8 Mile, starring Eminem, which was basically a biographical tale of Eminem. It's very closely modeled on Eminem's actual life. Um, directed that. He directed In Her Shoes
Oh yeah,
with
that is such a good movie. And I'm not a huge fan, and I think you're not either, of
Cameron Diaz.
Cameron Diaz. Thank you. See how much of a fan I was. But yet this movie worked. I actually watched that movie, and even though my wife says I cried at the drop of a hat, I actually felt myself getting drawn in more and more into the sisters' um, paradox of being sisters. And it made me respect the process that they had to go through to, I mean, in trueness, grow up and be accountable. And it was a really good film. I actually liked that film a lot. Not a film that would typically just draw me to watch. So yeah, that's because of him, I'm sure.
And another movie that he's well known for is Wonder Boys.
Oh, Michael Douglas, yeah.
With Michael Douglas and Tobey Maguire and Katie Holmes,
Yep.
Frances McDormand. Again, the casting for this movie and for all the movies for which he's well known is really well done. I mean, and you can win or lose a movie like 50%, 50 to 75% of your movie through your casting choices. He has, like, In Her Shoes, had Cameron Diaz, who I actually like her as an actress. There are just some things that she's done which I think she wasn't well cast for. But in this movie, she was well cast. And like My Best Friend's Wedding, she was great in that movie. But against Cameron Diaz, it was Toni Collette, who's an awesome actress. She is amazing. So yeah, he got the right people. And with Wonder Boys, you have Michael Douglas, who is still trying to survive winning the Academy Award for Wall Street, because there are few things that can put the kibosh on your career quicker than actually winning the Academy Award.
Right. That's very true.
Especially for Best Actor. So he's like scarfing around looking for suitable vehicles. And this comes along. And what's nice about this movie is that it's this sort of like gallows humor type comedy. Michael Douglas is a teacher, professor, college professor, but he's also an author. And he's supposed to have this book written, but he really hasn't finished writing the book, or he started the book and he keeps writing, but he can't finish the book. He's on page 2000 and whatever, and he's still writing. Robert Downey Jr. is his publisher. Yeah. And and Robert Downey Jr. plays a gay man who is dating a transvestite at the beginning of the movie, but then he becomes attracted to Tobey Maguire, and we don't know what's going on with Tobey Maguire because he's just one weird dude. We don't know if he's suicidal or if he's just psychotic or sociopathic. We don't know what's going on with him. He's very weird. And then there's Katie Holmes, who's sort of attracted to him, to Michael Douglas, but Michael, fortunately, and this was refreshing, Michael Douglas isn't at all interested in her. He's in love with Frances McDormand, who's his mistress. But she's married to, she's his boss, and she's married to, who plays her husband in the movie. And of course, in the beginning of the movie, there's this party for, and Robert Downey Jr. is like, oh, well, maybe if I can come to this party that you're going to be at, Michael, then maybe I can look at the book and, see some of the pages and get an idea. And Michael's like, well, I don't know about that. Oh, sure. So Robert Downey Jr. invites him and his date to the party. And Michael Douglas gets to Frances McDormand's house, his boss and his lover, and they go upstairs for a private moment, and they're sort of like, laying down on the bed on top of the coats, and she says, well, how was your day? And he's like, well, my day was, I'm pregnant, and it's like, okay, I guess this wasn't about me after all. You don't really want to know how I am, do you? Why don't we just start with how you are? You're pregnant, but, and then it just, that's the beginning of the movie. And it just sort of takes off from there.
It was a quirky movie.
It's very quirky. It didn't. I don't believe it did that well at the box office, and maybe it just wasn't pitched the right way, or maybe it came out the wrong time of year. I don't know, but you know, really good acting. I mean, Tobey Maguire was really, you know, just so weird. It's like, I don't know if I want to keep looking at you, but at the same time, I can't look away. So, you know, he did that, and he has this, you know, he, especially in 2000 when this movie came out, he had such a baby face, and that, you know, and but the fact that he, you know, could kill a dog and do all this other weird stuff, it's like, oh, that baby face is doing all this weird stuff.
I was gonna bring up the dog was a good actor for a minute. but
Right.
you're right. And why is Toby walking around with a gun? I don't know. This is a crazy dude.
Yeah.
So he shouldn't be walking around.
Well, he said it was a pretend gun, except it wasn't.
But it wasn't. Because
but it wasn't.
But that way, no one thinks there's anything wrong or suspicious. If it's a play gun, why would you be carrying a play gun? But anyway.
Right. But, you know, again, the casting was just really well done. And the movie was actually shot in and around Carnegie Mellon University. So, it realistic look, like a realistic sort of typical college, you know, type atmosphere, because it was shot in and around a university, which was nice. You know, yay Pittsburgh.
Yes, sir. Gotta get all the cities we can. So many cities don't get any respect, and you just gave a shout out to Pittsburgh. Way to go.
I did.
All those terrible towel people. All righty, if you're a football fan. So I guess to culminate this and kind of wrap this up, because we're getting close to our time. Here's a guy, as you alluded to, not very many credits, directing credits, but obviously a good writer, obviously understands photography and getting the right scenes and the right picture, the right effect for all these different films, and especially the ones that we mentioned. I think bodes well for, sadly, a shortened life, but bodes well for his legacy. I think this was a director who knew what the heck he was doing.
He did. And you know, you did mention something about how he used Matt McCoy in not only The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, but LA Confidential. Kim Basinger was not only in LA Confidential, she was in 8 Mile.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, so yeah, he's one of those people who, you know, would find, like, you know, would go back to, you know, he would use his actors, the actors that he worked with, as a resource, you know, and, you know, if they gave him what he wanted, then, you know, he would hire them again, which is always a good thing, you know, especially if you're the actor.
Hollywood. Exactly, especially Hollywood. Got to keep working.
Right. Exactly.
Faucet bill.
Right. But yes, he's very talented. I mean, he died this past week. He was 71, complications from Alzheimer's. So he had actually retired from public life several years ago because of these complications. But you know, I think to make the kind of mark that he made with such a short body of work really speaks to his talent. Not to take away from those directors with much larger bodies of work, because the people that we talk about mostly are always talented. You know, we don't spend a lot of time talking about untalented people. So it's not the shortage of talent that's the issue. But I think it does say something special if you can, and as one newspaper article, one reporter said, if you can touch greatness. And Kurt Hanson did. He made, it might, I mean, you could make 17 films. You could be a great director, and your first 25 films could be, you know, crappy to okay or good, but you may not get to great. But he got to great.
Yeah, I think that is, as you said, it sometimes it doesn't matter the amount as much as the development and the, the end product being a good product. And he obviously has done that on more than one occasion. All those films that we mentioned are worth watching. And but of course, L.A. Confidential is the cream de la creme of all of these films. But I really enjoyed the other ones that we mentioned, and that's a lot. You can't really say that. Even as you alluded to, even people with a uh, um, broader credits with regard to the amount of films. It's not the amount; it's the quality. And so he was able to facilitate that quality in a short period of time. Just had he had been out there sooner, had he had more opportunity, um, who knows what he could have facilitated. Not having to deal with um, his disease, what else we could have been looking forward to, and that says a lot. And I think uh, he won't be someone I will forget anytime soon. Um, so if you haven't seen these films, ladies and gentlemen, do watch them. Do take the time because they are quality films, especially LA Confidential.
Especially.
Well, that's our time for this week. We want to thank you for listening in, and we hope that you tell your friends to come and stop by and listen to our uh, videos on film here at A Real Point of View. We are trying to introduce and or um, what's another good word? Um, support the film industry and good films that are out there. And as Karen stated, we try to talk about really good films, really good directors, producers, actors here on this show. And so come back, look at some of our archives, and see some other films and directors and other character personalities that we've discussed, and even some of the interviews that we've had. And you can check those out here on A Real Point of View on YouTube, and also on Blog Talk Radio under A Real Point of View. We have some information there, and a lot of nice archive shows there as well. So thanks again for listening to us here on A Real Point of View. Anything you want to say, Karen, before we take off?
It's no, except I've really enjoyed having the opportunity to learn a little bit more about Curtis Hanson, because I didn't know who he was before we started prepping for this week's show. So it's always interesting to learn about a name, especially somebody who isn't necessarily a household name in the general public, but is well known in the industry. So yeah, it's very interesting and fun to learn about this very talented director.
Oh, one other thing. For those of you who are in New York right now, the Urban World Film Festival is going on, and I have an associate out there who's showing her wares. Nicole Franklin's out there trying to push her film. She's got a clipping conversation going on today and tomorrow, I believe. So if you're out in New York, go to the World Film Festival, the Urban World Film Festival. There's a lot of great directors, actors, producers out there, and some wonderful films, especially independent films. So shout out to her, and shout out to everybody out there. And again, thanks here for listening to A Real Point of View. And we're going to try to come back with something cool next week. Take care, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Peace.